You can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect the dots looking backward. Steve Jobs. So in today's video, we're going to dissect this quote. So Steve Jobs said this quote during his Stanford speech at the graduation ceremony. And he also had a small story to explain this quote. So I just want to play you a clip about a story where he took a calligraphy class from Reed College.
Reed College at that time offered perhaps the best calligraphy instruction in the country. Throughout the campus, every poster, every label on every drawer was beautifully hand calligraphed. Because I had dropped out and didn't have to take the normal classes, I decided to take a calligraphy class to learn how to do this. I learned about serif and sans serif typefaces, about varying the amount of space between different letter combinations, about what makes great typography great. It was beautiful, historical, artistically subtle in a way that science can't capture, and I found it fascinating. None of this had even a hope of any practical application in my life. But 10 years later, when we were designing the first Macintosh computer, it all came back to me. And we designed it all into the Mac. It was the first computer with beautiful typography. If I had never dropped in on that single course in college, the Mac would have never had multiple typefaces or proportionally spaced fonts. And since Windows just copied the Mac, it's likely that no personal computer would have them. If I had never dropped out, I would have never dropped in on that calligraphy class, and personal computers might not have the wonderful typography that they do. Of course, it was impossible to connect the dots looking forward when I was in college, but it was very, very clear looking backwards 10 years later. Again, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards.
So what happens when we connect the dots looking forward? So let's say we have this project right here and we need to plan it out. So what people usually do is they over plan right at the start. So they look at the dots and they come up with a plan. So they just connect random dots together and they end up with the final product. And it's usually something complex. They don't really know the form and the function of this product or service that they just created. So this is what happens when you connect the dots looking forward. So how do you connect the dots looking backwards? So Steve Jobs said that he took the calligraphy class, but he originally didn't know why he was taking these classes. He simply took it because he was interested in calligraphy. So what you need to do is just make something that you're interested in. Doesn't have to be planned properly, doesn't have to be perfect, it just needs to be something. So there's these three shapes here, a circle, a square, and a triangle. And now, so I just created something. Now I'm going to connect the dots looking backwards. So how did I get to these three shapes here? So I connected the dots, and these are the same exact dots that we had before, except they make up three completely different shapes. And we know what these shapes are. It's a circle, square, and a triangle. And we can connect these dots now, and now we can work backwards. So this is how you connect the dots looking backwards. So when Steve Jobs launched the first Mac, and back then computers didn't really have beautiful looking fonts or beautiful looking typography. And then he looked backwards and thought, I learned typography, so I should be adding beautiful fonts to computers. And the Mac was the first computer to have beautiful typography and calligraphy integrated into it. So Jeff Bezos, the CEO of Amazon, also has a similar idea. So he says, determine what the customers need and work backwards. So in this, he kind of reverse engineers what the customers need. So he doesn't build something and then he tries to fit it inside the customer. He actually figures out what the customers need and then he breaks that apart and then he builds it. So that's connecting the dots looking backwards, and that's also kind of similar to reverse engineering. So I'm going to make a detailed video on reverse engineering soon. Make sure you stay subscribed and hit that notification bell so you'll be notified when I release that video. Robert Greene also used a similar strategy to write his famous book, The 48 Laws of Power. So if you don't know about the 48 Laws of Power, it goes into 48 strategies to get into power. So this could be political power, workplace power, or social. And he didn't really take any lessons on how to get into power and all that. He only read history books. And he had no idea how these history lessons will help him in the future. Eventually, he connected the dots and he realized that he learned how to get into power by reading so many history books. And I just want to share a small clip about how he connected the dots.
I met a man there named Joost Elfers, a packager and producer of books. One day, while we were walking along the quays of Venice, Joost asked me if I had any ideas for a book. Suddenly, seemingly out of nowhere, an idea just gushed out of me. It was about power. It was about power. I told Joost that I was constantly reading books on history. And the stories that I read of Julius Caesar and the Borgias and Louis XIV, these were the exact same stories that I had personally witnessed with my own eyes in all of my different jobs, only less bloody. People want power, and they want to disguise this wanting of power, and so they play games. They covertly manipulate and intrigue, all the while presenting a nice, even saintly front. I would expose these games. I gave him numerous examples of what I meant, and he became increasingly excited. He said I should write a treatment, and if it was good enough, he would pay me to live while I wrote half the book, enough to sell it to a publisher. Suddenly, in writing what would become the 48 Laws of Power, everything in my disjointed past seemed to click into place, like magic, like destiny. All of those various writing experiences, the journalism, the television, the theater, the film, had given me the skills to tell stories and organize my thoughts. All of that reading of history had given me a vast storehouse of ideas that I could draw upon, and my work as a researcher had taught me how to find the perfect anecdote. In my own very weird and intuitive way, I had given myself the perfect education for the writing of the 48 Laws of Power.
In conclusion, if you want to connect the dots backwards, you just need to do something that you enjoy, and eventually the dots will connect. Just like how Robert Greene was just reading books because he liked reading books on history. And he didn't really know how this will help him in the future. But then unintentionally, he gave himself a lesson on how people get into power. And eventually that turned into the 48 Laws of Power. So he was just doing something that he enjoys, and he connected the dots, and he came up with the final product, which is the 48 Laws of Power. So this is how you connect the dots looking backwards. If you connect the dots looking forward, you're just creating something that people will think you think people will like, but you don't really know until you actually put the final product out there, and you just wasted all this time. So you have to just put something out there and then connect the dots backwards. So I hope this video was helpful. If you have any questions, just comment down below, and make sure you hit that subscribe button and notification bell so you'll be notified when I upload a video. Also make sure you follow me on Twitter and on Instagram. I post images like this every single day, so make sure you follow me, and I'll see you in the next video.